For joining today. If you're just now joining live over on Facebook, appreciate you being there. I've got a new camera today that I'm using. Well, it's actually an old camera, an older camera than what I was using before, but a different camera for the headshot of myself, and encountered a problem with streaming to YouTube. So that apparently got broken again by YouTube making some changes to the Restream API. Really, all that means is that this is the second or third time that YouTube has done that. Facebook seems to be the more stable API for this restreaming software. So thanks for joining, and I'll go ahead and get started here. I was hoping that maybe we would get done today with this portrait. I don't think that's going to be possible. There's too much to do yet. I hadn't looked at it in a little while, and I couldn't remember exactly where we were. But now that I am looking at it, there's several more things that we'll have to do. So I'm going to grab some of my pencils that I know I want to use today. Before I get started here, make sure I've got those in hand. I've got a lot of red and pink going on in the skin tone right now, which is fine, and it helped establish some things very early on. Now we just want to start refining some of this and going back in another direction again. That's the thing that we keep doing in portraiture, is we keep going back and forth, putting on and going in a certain direction, and then leaning that back in a different direction. So I want some yellows, some ochres, some browns, and all within a lighter palette, lighter tonal direction. So I want to get some of these sharpened real quick. Again, if you have any questions at all, go ahead and type those into the chat. I'll try to answer those as they come in. I get a audible text-to-speech transmission over here. And I hope everyone's doing fine during this time of social distancing. All right, so I can probably go with this wheat color, if I can remember this. I'll try to use the wheat color for some of the lighter tones within shadows, and then I'll try to switch over to my champagne color for some of the lighter colors within the lit areas, the highlight areas. A little bit of sienna right in here. Make sure I didn't go up too far. And then I think this is brown ochre. No, olive brown. Olive brown 10%. That's another good one. So I can probably float in between those two for some of the shadows, the highlights or reflective light in the shadows, which is a good thing. Okay. I'm going to extend this a little bit. Right in there. And push that back down. Whoops. I always forget to turn this camera on in record mode. There we go. And we got it going. All right. same on this side. Again, we're using LuxArchival Sanded Paper. It's a premium sanded paper. It's a 400 grit level of sanded paper on the surface. It's a very, very nice paper. Okay. Let me look. I think what we'll do is, let me see. Might want to use, yeah, I think we'll go with this guy. So probably use this, what they're calling flesh pink in the Derwent Lightfast line. It's going on there pretty nicely. I had to spray this to get a little more tooth on the paper. So that has afforded me an opportunity to add even more layers than what we already have. So that's great. Sometimes after you spray your project, then the surface will react just a little bit differently than it did prior to that, and so you want to sort of test it out and see how it's going to behave and how it's going to react to new pencil layers. So far this is going really well. But I do want to pay attention to my stroke and make sure that I'm not creating, because I'm getting close to the finish line, I don't want to create just a bunch of linear strokes. I want to make sure that I've got a smooth transition in any of the tones that I lay down. There we go. As long as I don't have my nose right up on the piece, then I should be able to look at it a little more objectively and be able to see the transition a little bit better. If I'm too close to my piece, sometimes, it may appear that I need to be overly concerned about little tiny, tiny things that I don't need to be concerned about. So there's a little bit of leeway when it comes to some of these subjective choices in shading. So proportions and alignment of features and size of features and things like that, those are not usually very subjective at all. Those are very concrete, objective things, all about the relationships between each of those things. Those make a difference because those help with recognizability. And if I get those wrong, then it's going to show. It's going to stand out. And there's not a lot of margin for error when we're talking about features. But shading, that's a different story, especially when we're shading different areas that we don't always necessarily see in our reference, but we know just as portrait artists that we can include. And so I just want to be aware of that there is a difference in some of the things that I'll do when I get down towards the end of the piece and towards the finished product. When I'm making all those final touches and all those final decisions, then I've got a little bit of leeway when I do that. Okay. Now I will probably use another pencil in between here to brush that just a little bit to make it look a little more smooth than even it does right now. That probably will help it just a little bit. Yeah, I will do that. There we go. So I did talk about the coronavirus on the podcast that was published today. If you're interested in that, you can go over to sharpenedartist.com/podcast. I did talk about it on there. You know, that's on everyone's mind. That's what we're bombarded with in the news, and rightfully so. There's some things that we should be aware of and some things we should respect and do. And Ohio in particular has taken a little more aggressive approach than many other states in the United States. And so as a member of the state, I have to be aware of that as well. And wherever you are, I'm sure you're probably keeping up with what's going on and what you need to be doing in order to abide by whatever is in place and whatever orders have been established for this time period. Okay. I'm going to go over here. This is lighter right in here on the cheek. As artists, I mean, we sort of practice social distancing anyway, just because of our work. And what we do typically is handled in isolation and in private. When we're in our studio, we're working by ourselves. Most of us are. And so there's not, a whole lot of change with regard to our work, with regard to, how we are approaching our work. That's not the case for many others. Okay. I can use a lighter touch as I get closer to the eye socket over here and this orbital area. I can use a light touch. Yeah, I hear you. Over there on Twitter, I guess your name is pronounced Amel. I'm not real sure, but so we're streaming over on Twitter today and on Facebook. And yeah, you're mentioning that art at home is great, but the kids will be home for who knows how long. Yeah, that's true. That is something to contend with, right? They're not allowed to go anywhere, do anything socially. So yeah, that is a concern. And could be stifling for an artist, right? If you're having to entertain children or make sure that they're busy doing what they need to be doing, working on schoolwork online, that kind of thing. That's very true. Good point. Okay. Boy, I'm loving that. I'm loving how much that looks like skin right there. That's what I was hoping for. It's turning out, I believe. We're getting that soft dimensional curve and a subtle pinnacle in the cheek. Love it. Right there at the top of the cheek. And then as it moves away, it creates that nice slow gradation in that tonal value that's lighter up here at the pinnacle and then moves away. Love that. Okay. Still probably want to add a little more yellow. You know, I'm always thinking in 3 color directions when I'm doing portraits. I'm thinking in red, yellow, and blue. Sometimes it helps to think in brown. But red, yellow, and a darker color. I want to avoid an orange color. And I want to avoid a real hot pink or hot red kind of color. I want to get away from that if I can. I don't want that to dominate. All right, I think I need just a little more light. I'm going to pull this light around so I can see this just a little bit better than what I am right now. Hopefully that's not going to create a glare, though, too much. Let's see if I can manage that a little bit without it causing a problem. Okay. That's not too bad. And I can see that just a little bit better. And there we go. Yeah, I like that. All right. Certain things I wasn't able to see. Now I can see it just a little bit better. Right in there. Okay. So now I want to switch over to my yellow. I'm thinking still in that direction of red, yellow, and blue. So I'm going to use this champagne color. And as this dimensional edge of the turn here, this corner, if you will, in the head starts to meet the side plane, then what we've got going on is a little bit more of this warmth, this glow kind of warmth, right? It can start to happen. There's a little bit of distance from this pink color that would happen right up here by that turn of the head, of the face, that area. And instead we'll have more of an influence of an ochre color, this yellow color. Very, very subtle, but nonetheless it's still there. And I want to depict that a little bit. Right in there. lighten up my pressure as I move down the face, because I'm using lighter colors, and I don't want there to be a dominant light pinnacle or any kind of lighting that may happen as I move down the face. Because the point is, I want to have everything brightest up at the top, right? This bright area of the forehead, I want that to be brighter. And as we get to the cheek, right in here, this needs to be brighter, right? And then as I move down the face, it's not going to be as bright as those other two spots or even the nose. Because that is the way light works and shadows travel, right? It makes more sense logically. And go in this direction a little bit as well. Add a little more of that yellow right in here. Some of this gets a little stubborn after you've sprayed it. So you come back in here and just work on that a little bit by adding more strokes together. At this point, the pencil is not adhering to the surface as quickly as it did early on in the process, which is what we would expect, but we just have to remember that, keep that in mind. That's going to happen. We'll move that back in a darker direction maybe a little bit later. Forgot I have this cinnamon color. Go ahead and get it sharp so I can use it here in a moment. All right. Now, pull out this. What did I do with that one? There we go. The olive brown. I'm going to use that just a little bit down in here. To lighten some of this up. As I move away from an area that I want to be a bit of a highlight, then I want to lighten up my pencil pressure in that area. I want to use a very light touch or light pencil pressure. So it needs to be a soft transition into the highlight and then a soft transition back out of the highlight. And nothing real harsh at this point. You can't get away with real dominant, harsh lines, either dark or light lines, because we're getting close to the end of the drawing process. I'm going to brush this just a little bit more right in here. And we'll go over on top of that again. I want to move that back just a little bit. You see how that lengthened some of those strokes that we put on there? It spread that lighter color out just a little bit. Okay. Now we'll come back in here with this lighter color. There we go. Yeah, now that I'm working on this a little bit more, we may go ahead and spray this again. Probably will. Probably will be spraying it one more time. Okay, I do want that to be a little bit darker. Okay. Needs to be a little bit more, a little more tapering of that shadow or that shading right in there. There we go. Not quite right, but getting close. Add a little lighter color on top, and then we'll go back in that other direction again. Okay. Want that to be just a little more subtle than what it is. And we're building up some of these layers as we keep floating in and out of these darker and lighter mid-range values. You know, these are not real dark, these are not real bright. But they are on the brighter side, but we're within a mid-range when we're applying them on the surface here, because we're only sort of blushing everything. We're tinting everything that we've already built up, all the layers that we've built up, all these subsequent layers. And so we're not pushing everything totally back to a light color. We're building up mid-range values. But in order to do that, especially at this point in the drawing process, I'm going to have to use some brighter colors, because right now I'm working against some darker colors. Okay, so before I get too far, I gotta go back over here to this side. And before I built up a whole lot of layers, you know, I have a waxy buildup over here on the left right now. And that's allowing me a lot of things, but it's allowing me to smooth out some of those layers that I put down. And I want to do the same thing up here, that side of the face. But it also has built up those layers and allows me to make subtle transitions. And so I don't have a whole bunch of linear pencil strokes that are sticking out and looking like, you know, they're just pencil strokes. It's actually allowing me to mimic some of the texture of skin. Now I have to be careful because this is a child. I don't want there to be a whole lot of texture. It needs to be really smooth, but it still turns out to become, you know, it becomes a more believable texture than it would otherwise if I'm just relying on a lot of pencil strokes. It's a waxy buildup that I'm just kind of pushing around. But it starts to look smooth, which is what we want. So we're pushing in a light direction, we're pushing in a darker direction, and we're still staying, though, within the mid-tone area as we do that. sometimes we just want a formula, and we just want to know, okay, just tell me the exact colors, and just tell me the exact layers with the exact colors, and I'll just go do that. And if you could do that in some ways, you could, and you could mimic a process like that, and then you could learn how to do that, and then just replicate that over and over again. Now see, this will turn out a little more splotchy at first, and then we will add more layers to smooth that out. But if you mimic a process and mimic a formula, and you get too formulaic in that, then what happens is it sort of makes us stop looking and observing. It doesn't sort of do that, it does do that. It will make us sometimes just stop thinking about the subject that we're portraying, and we just look in a certain area and we're like, okay, I know what to do in this area because this is how I always do it, rather than saying, what does this nose look like? What does this skin texture look like? What does this tone of skin look like? So that's what we want to ask ourselves. Okay, let's go back in this direction. So I don't want to create cheeks in isolation. I want to do similar things to both sides. And so I want to look over at what I've done over on the left side. Do the same thing over here on the right side. Make sure it looks very similar. Alright, use a cinnamon again. That's one of my favorite pencil colors to use in portraits in the Derwent Lightfast line. It's called cinnamon. It's slightly different, very similar though to the Polychromos color of cinnamon, but it is slightly different. If you've used it, you know what I'm talking about. And it's a nice color though. Okay, let's get one of these yellow colors in here. We are on this lighter side over here. I don't want to forget that. I want to make sure that this does look brighter over on this side. Pressing kind of hard over here. It's taking a little more pressure to the point of the tip of the pencil to get more pencil to adhere to the surface than it did before. Now I want to ease up on my pressure, use sort of a medium pressure, and move all the way down that pinnacle of the cheek, this high spot on the cheek. So I built that up just a little bit. Now I'm going to add this flesh pink over here. If I keep turning my pencil a little, pretty much a 1/8 of a turn to a 3, not quite a 3/4 turn, but I just turn it just a little bit with my thumb as I am drawing, then what happens is I will maintain a pretty sharp point, and I won't have to sharpen the pencil as often when I do that. Somebody emailed me and asked me why I whisper when I'm doing the live streams, and I guess I do. I'm not meaning to. I'm focused more on drawing, than I am speaking. And so I like to, actually get something accomplished when I'm drawing. I don't want at the end of the 30 minutes to an hour or whatever the amount of time is, I don't want you to look back at it and say, wow, he only drew one little tiny, tiny spot. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just not what I want to do. I want to actually help you to hear my thought process and how I'm approaching something. And so I'm trying to talk about it more, but there's something that happens to your brain when you're creating, and you're nearly a little bit impaired when you're you're attempting to talk and create at the same time. You're using some other areas where you're trying to describe something, and then you're using yet another area of your brain to create and to actually work on the art. So that's the reason for that. Build this up very slowly. There's a few little grooves in there that I'm not crazy about. Some of that will smooth itself out the more layers I get in there. Some of it may not, and that's fine. After I spray it again and then I come back in there, it will smooth itself out a little bit more. Or you can stand back 5 feet from it and you won't see it at all. There's always that. I think sometimes as artists we hyper focus on tiny, tiny details sometimes, and I'm just as guilty as the next artist doing that, rather than thinking about the overall. Okay, I'm going to switch over here, move this down, go down the length of that cheek. I can subtly, just very, very small, minute changes. I can subtly make small changes to the position of my hand, my wrist, my arm, so that I'm hitting the surface in a slightly different direction, and more will adhere to the surface when I do that. It'll adhere to it in a different way as well, which is a good thing. There we go. That's a little bit too far, and I don't want to go down that far. Now I can remove some of that without removing subsequent layers because I sprayed it. It's another advantage that we get when we spray something. We lock things in place. We lock everything in place that we've done before. I'm going to go in here and see if I can get some of that to adhere right there in that dark area. And doesn't look like that I can with that pencil, so that's okay. I just wanted to know if I could or not. Come back in this direction. Needs to be just a little bit darker right there. There we go. This could be slightly lighter right there. Okay. And let's go back over here. Okay. Now, I don't want a line over here. I want this to have a subtle transition from a light area over to the lighter part of this side of the cheek. I'm sort of pushing all of those things together, or brushing that area to get rid of anything that might look like a line over there. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. I can look at that thumbnail image and what I'm doing. Sometimes that helps, just looking at it on the larger screen. Helps me to see it a little bit better than looking at it right here under my nose. All right. And this little area right in here, I am liking that. This color right in there, because there's enough of that backlit area within the shadow that will illuminate that edge of the cheek as it wraps back around and forms this pinnacle on top. It comes down like this, and then we've got another highlight down here, right in here, working its way back up the face a little bit. It's not as bright as the one up here, but I'm going to make it a little bit brighter at first, and then I'm going to use some mid-range values to push it back down. I can hit this highlight over here again, just a little bit. Come back over here, push that up. There's a line there. There's nothing wrong with doing this. There's a line there that is starting to stick out like a sore thumb, and I can tap on a few of those just to get rid of them so they don't distract me from what I'm doing. And I don't start thinking, okay, I need to go add more pressure over there. I don't want to do that. Okay, so I need to sharpen that cinnamon color, but I can come back in that opposite direction now with this cinnamon color all the way down the face, or this side of the cheek, and you can push that lighter color again. It's not nearly as smooth as what I would like right now. So I'm going to come back in there with this lighter color again, and I want to pay attention to this area over here by the mouth and include it now this time. You can go in this direction, and if it's brighter right there by the edge of the mouth, then as I move away from that edge of the mouth with this linear stroke, I can lighten up my pressure to create a little bit of a smooth gradation right there. Move over just a little bit and do the very same thing, and include those subsequent marks that I made just a moment ago. Same thing over here. Go back down here again and move up just a little bit. Now I'm looking at my reference, and it might be kind of hard to see. I've got this smaller one up here, so you might be able to see this, but right in here is a little bit of a highlight. There's some highlights right in here that I want to try to include in here. That will help quite a bit. I'm okay with it looking a little odd for a moment and looking blotchy and looking like, you know, there's too many lines and that kind of thing, because remember, I can go back in there and smooth that out with more of that cinnamon color or whatever other colors I want to use to create that mid-range value area. Okay. And let's see here. Yeah, we will use that cinnamon color, but I'm going to only use it very, very lightly. I'm going to use a very light touch right now. Now, one of the things also keep in mind is the type of pencil that you're using. You might be using a wax-based pencil that is very, very soft, and then you can come back on top of that with an oil-based pencil like the Derwent Lightfast, and maybe it's a little harder lead, and you may knock off some of those layers that you just built up, which is fine, but just knowing that is something to be aware of. Just be aware that that can happen, does happen. Sometimes it's a strategy, it's a technique that you can use to be able to get some movement in an area. So you're putting it on, and then you're a very soft wax-based pencil, and then you can brush it. And some of it will come off, but you're smoothing it out too by using a little bit harder pencil when you do that. It works really well doing that. All right. Now this highlight over here, it turns and it moves right back up over here. It's not as bright over there. So I can either use lighter pressure, which I think I will. Now I've got two pencils that are the same. Anytime I've got duplicate pencils in my hand, I have to ask myself, did I think I picked a different pencil color, or was I looking at it and thought it was the same color, but maybe I was going to use it a lot, and so if I dull the point on one, I can grab the other real quick. Sometimes I'm not thinking, though, about what was in my hand, and I just grabbed one. So I want to make sure I know what I'm grabbing, and that I'm looking at that and thinking about it. Because if I think I've got a darker value that I'm going to start using, turns out to be the same value, that can cause me a problem. All right. That's much better. It needs to be slightly darker and then fade into that area. Okay. I know we're not quite done anyway with how that mouth is going to appear, and the teeth especially. So, but for early on in this process here, well, I guess it's not early on, is it? But in that area, it's a little bit early on. Okay, let's go in this direction. That's too much of a line right there. We don't want that. So I need to come back inside this shadow. This all needs more yellow in it, though. Quite a bit more. Very lightly, though. I'm going to just suggest a little bit of that tone right in there. And go with this more olive color right here. You know, this does wrap around this very subtle pink color. This is nearly a glow that will wrap around this area, this dimple kind of area, this area where the muscles collect over on the corner of the mouth, in the cheek. And if I add a little more of this value over here, this color, then I can create a subtle transition from dark to light or light to dark. It's a little bit better. We're getting there. Okay. If you happen to be watching the replay, then I just want to say appreciate you watching today. And we do this live stream on Mondays at 10 a.m. Typically, we're live streaming, and I will post the replay over there on YouTube. But typically, what we're doing is we're live streaming on YouTube and Facebook at the same time. Now, I have done Twitter also, all three platforms at the same time in the past, and I may start doing that again. YouTube seems to be a little less reliable lately for maintaining some consistency with the API interface. So once in a while they'll make some changes, and then Restream is the software that I use to stream to all of these platforms live. Restream is left sort of scrambling, trying to figure out how to modify their platform for the stream key to be able to work. So we may just start doing more on Twitter, streaming over there to Twitter and Facebook, since they're a little more consistent, seems like. All right, this isn't the first time this has happened with YouTube, so. Going to make all of this come together just a little bit down here, a little bit better. All right, I'll make sure I get rid of some of this dust that may be occurring here. Again, these are wax-based pencils on sanded paper. There we go. Yeah, that is darker right in there, but the dark area is so subtle in how it, the movement of that dark area is very subtle. So it moves from this dark area to a lighter area and changes very, very slowly. And so what I'm talking about is this, let me pull this over, this dark area right in here by the corner of the mouth, and how it transitions and moves into the light area. See, I want to capture that as an artist. I want that right there, this dark area to the light area. I don't want to ignore it, and I don't want to create some big crease right there. if I do that, I'm going to immediately age this little girl and make her look, you know, maybe 30 years old. I don't want to do that. I want to depict that curve just as slowly and subtly as what I see in reality and in this reference, certainly. And I have to remember that I'm going to get more layers again. I'm going to spray it, and so I will have an opportunity to add even more layers and smooth some of this out. I want a very, very smooth transition. Okay. Same thing over here. You know, I don't want there to be a real dark wrinkle or crease that depicts like a some dark area that you don't actually see in the reference. I want there to be a subtle transition. And I can go darker and then move that back in a lighter direction again. There we go. All right. There is a lighter area right here above the lips on the mouth. And this is where, you know, we start adding all of this back in. This is where we can get more of that yellowish, you know, more of that golden kind of tint. Right now, you know, if I'm putting this in and I'm not brushing that back out, then it can start to look like Got Milk commercial, and I don't want that. So I want to push that up, and then I want to come back in there and knock that back down with a more subtle mid-range value. Okay. Come back in here with cinnamon and smooth that out a little bit. Now, if you're working on something today, comment down in the comments there. Let me know. And if you're, you know, if you're drawing along with me, I know some have, and I've seen the work that they've sent me, which is impressive. You got done with this a lot faster than I did, and I'm thinking of one artist in particular where she drew this reference and sent it to me, and it looks great. And she just got after it and got it done, where I'm taking a lot of time. Nothing wrong with either approach. All right, let's go up here. We're getting some lines that we don't want right in there. I'm not sure why that is. Just some irregularities in the surface right now due to the workable fixative that's on there. Okay. Come back in that direction. Just a little bit more. There we go. I want to look at it. Yeah, Got Milk commercial. That's what it looks like. do is add this lighter pink color for a moment. Push that into this other color. Go in this direction a little bit. Very uneven application right now. Okay, so let's use cinnamon again and sort of blend all this together, brush all this lighter area just a little bit. Not bad. We do need to spray this though again, and that will help us quite a bit, not only in this area but in some other areas too. Okay, let me get rid of some of those lines up here. Push that back just a little bit more. There we go. Still seeing a line over here. I don't like that. I don't want lines. Lines aren't fun to stand in, nor are they fun in realistic art. Don't want lines. Lines are for coloring books, not for realistic art. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about lines as though it's some kind of, in realistic art, I'm talking about representational art, as though it's something to achieve. Like that, you know, that could be okay if that's the look that you're going for. That's not the look I'm wanting, though. I don't want lines. I want to get rid of lines. Sometimes the way to get rid of lines is to add more lines, right? Add more lines. Sometimes that is the very thing that you need in order to eradicate a harsh edge or a line. Because that's what I want. I want edges. I want values that are separated by an edge, right? Okay. Let's see what this looks like right here. Not enough of a subtle transition right there at all. But some of this I'm going to have to spray it a little bit, but I don't want to stop this prematurely and then sit here off camera and work on this because I'm wanting it to be at a different level. I did some of that last time, so I don't want to do that this time. I want to sit here while I'm still streaming and make sure that I'm a little bit satisfied with it before I stop the stream today. And there's certain things I'm not going to get perfectly the way I want them right now, which is fine. Okay, now this is interesting. I'm looking at this. I need to get rid of that. It comes down just a little bit. Right in here. And then it is a little bit darker, and then it comes out of that dark area. And it's a little bit brighter over here because of the way that shadow would travel. That upper lip, this upper part of the mouth, is shading this bottom part, right? That's what's going on. And so I can depict that. As long as I know why something is happening, then I can return to looking at the abstract overall shape of a shadow or a highlight, and I can start depicting it a little easier because I know why it's there. I know what's happening with it. This is why I advocate knowing your subject matter. If your subject matter is birds, know birds really, really well. If it's people, know head construction, portraiture, and people and all how the features work together really, really well. If it's animals, dogs, or cats, or both, or whatever, know that subject matter. The more you learn about your preferred subject matter, the predominant subject matter that you work in, the better off you're going to be, because you're going to have an easier time depicting that subject. I hope that's logical, right? Makes sense, right? There's nothing wrong with drawing a lot of different subjects. Nothing wrong with that at all. But if you want to specialize in one area, then knowing as much about that area just makes your job a little bit easier. It makes it more fun, I believe. And there's just a lot of satisfaction in it as well, to know a lot about one subject matter. Nothing wrong with drawing a lot of subject matters. Nothing wrong with that at all. I know a lot of artists that do that. There's certainly nothing wrong with specializing in an area. Okay, let's see how that's looking. A few of those dark lines in there. You know, it's probably a little bit heavy-handed. That's probably why I'm fighting now against some of that. You know, it has to be why. That has to be the reason. So, some would call that a mistake then that I made earlier. And I'm okay with that. That's fine. But I look at mistakes as learning opportunities, and so next time I'll try not to go as dark in that area. I'll try not to put as many dark lines, you know, in that area. I want to get, oh, that lead just broke. Look at that. Wow. Just broke that off. Not good. That's aggravating. That pencil's getting really short as it is anyway. So oddly enough, the pencil color sienna is very, very similar to that cinnamon color. So if you break your cinnamon color, or you've run out, you know, you're down to the wire on your cinnamon color, pull out your sienna, and you're very, very similar in that color. Slightly darker. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to just survey it a little bit, look at it all, just a little bit. Still some things I need to do up there, obviously. There's a lot I need to do. Pretty obvious, I don't probably need to say that. But I think I'm okay with where I am today, with where things are right now. So if you're watching the replay, then just one more time, the reason why we did not stream on YouTube today is because YouTube did something to break the API between YouTube and Restream, which is the software that I use to create the multi-stream to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and anywhere else. So what I'm typically doing is I'm streaming to Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So we also streamed to Twitter today at the same time. And this part's bothering me. I gotta do this part right here before we go. Because that Restream API stream key was broken, and I got a big fat message saying that it is broken for right now due to some changes that YouTube made. So Facebook seems to be a little bit more stable platform for streaming a multi-stream like that, unless you're doing it natively inside there. Probably more than you ever wanted to know about any of that. But the point is this, that if you don't find the stream over there on YouTube, chances are you can go to facebook.com/sharpenedartist, I believe is the URL. And the stream will be over there Monday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when we do these. So we're almost done with this one. We will be done very, very shortly, and I'm so excited about what we've got planned next. And if you're somebody who is interested in portraiture at all, we're going to be starting a free portrait prep course. And we've done some, we've offered something similar in the past, very similar, but we're making some changes to it this time, and I'm very excited about what we're going to be offering this time. So if you're wanting to do that, it'll just get you ready to start drawing portraits in colored pencil. And the best way to check that out or to sign up on the wait list for that is to just go over to sharpenedartist.com/cpblog, and then look at the portrait prep series over there. At the end of any of those articles, you'll be able to sign up on the wait list for the portrait prep course. So, all right, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for joining today. Really appreciate you hanging out with me here. And we'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.